Hi everyone, my name is Tiffany if we've never met before, and today I want to share some dominant hero and heroines recommendations. So this list is of the kinky variety when it comes to dominance. I love a BDSM romance because of the heady power dynamics. I love the clear structure of consent. Although I am a reader that doesn't mind dubious, but that is a completely different video. I also like how a character's kink can be very revealing, and I love the level of trust that is required for two characters to engage in play. So when all of those things are done well, I just find it very meaty and satiating. So let's just get started. I'm gonna be referring to my list here to keep myself together. I'm trying to be an organized queen. Progress, not perfection. The first book on my list is Beyond Control. This is by Kit Roca, and this is a part of her Beyond series. This is set in a world where city dwellers reside in Eden. This is a very religious and repressive society, and just outside its borders are the sectors. They call them the slums of paradise, and those are inhabited by the so-called corrupt. And our hero's name is Dallas. He is the king of Sector 4. He is the leader of the O'Kane gang that he wrestled into being. He is dripping in dominance in his leadership and in his kink. This is a very hedonistic society where they really prioritize pleasure. And his right-hand woman, at least in terms of hierarchy, is Lex. She literally leapt off the page for me in the novella that introduces this world, because everyone bows to him except for Lex, and that is why he wants her. And yet she will never take his collar, which telegraphs partnership, because it is a sign of ownership, and she refuses to be that vulnerable. And I love the dynamics within this one, because this is an erotica, so this steam is granted, but the heady work that is being done between these two characters that have the utmost admiration and respect for each other's prowess, it's also coupled with this genuine fear that the other will play them, because love is already there. We go into this book knowing of their connection and their attraction to one another, and I love how in this erotica, carnal connection is not enough, okay? Topical attraction is not enough. They need to be convinced that they have access to each other's vulnerability. And I love how we see the strain between them during the steam. Dallas needs Lex to submit to him. He wants to know that she respects his leadership as a king, that she notes his intelligence as a man, and that he has won the heart of the most fierce and beautiful woman that he has ever met. That's very affirming for him, especially in this book where he's trying to expand his territory. And for Lex, she needs him to honor her agency because it has been hard won. And she wants him to respect her insight when it comes to politics, and just showcase an ability to recast the image of what a partnership would look like with her. She fears kneeling and being muzzled. That is by voice and through her choices. And so, I mean, they've already given each other their hearts, but they're desperately trying to keep that concealed, and the steam is all too revealing. And so I just love the dynamics in this, the struggle. I don't always need a heroine that has natural submissive tendencies. This really showcases the sacrifice of submission and how it's hard won. So I loved it. The next book on my list is, what is it? Oh, this one features a dominant hero and heroine, and they're only switches for each other. If you don't know, a switch is someone that can play the dominant and submissive role. And I am talking about Night by Katie Robichaud. This is part of her Club Alias series, and I do apologize because this is book 5. But in general, I think if you're new to BDSM romances, this is a great series to start with, because in order to get a membership to the club, Every character has to go see Doc for at least 3 therapy sessions. And there it's really explained all of the dynamics, how one can find healing through play. And it's also a club that prioritizes safety. And I will say, if you're binging this like I did, or you're really well versed in BDSM romances, then that kind of explanation can feel repetitive. But I like that she assumes that you're going in with no knowledge. In this book, it is a friends to lovers age gap. Clarice is a goddess to Brian. She's older than him. She introduced him to the lifestyle, and she kind of reminds me of a siren. Like the kind of woman that is bewitching to all men and just transforms every space that they inhabit. That's Clarice, okay? She has a severe case of wanderlust. She has an aversion to commitment, and she loves control, which makes her submission all the more gratifying and a gift for Brian. And she's the only woman that he will submit to. And in this book, we get their backstory, because there is an entire novella series that covers their 10-year friends with benefit situation, okay? We go into this book knowing of their routine of dropping in and out of each other's lives. And that has really allowed Clarice to keep him at arm's length. And there we know that they really love each other, but Clarice is keeping a secret that has sort of like, reinforced the wedge between them. And the beginning of this book, Brian sort of disrupts their routine by asking her to come and visit, not for a steamy rendezvous, in his actual life. And the way that he slowly chisels at her freaking walls in this, I absolutely love, because the reason why Clarice is willing to submit to Brian is because she's harboring all of this guilt for knowing him in such an intimate way and not being an open book herself. She and Brian met in Afghanistan during the war. She was a photographer, and he was quite literally her knight when he saves her and the lives of many others. She's the one that nurses him back to health through his amnesia, and she witnessed him coming back into self-discovery. And so I like how in this book, now that he has matured emotionally and within his kink, it is her turn to be vulnerable. And I just ate it up. This one is very good. I love the friends to lovers. And I love the secret that she's harboring. It seems like it's harmless, but I understand the fear. That's all I'm gonna say. The next book on my list is my Kindle's like not organized. I say that in every video and I really need to do that. Okay, sorry. The Devil's Submission by Nicola Davis. This is a historical. This is the second in her Fallen series, and the Fallen is a pleasure club. And I like that she based this club off of real Regency era clubs that were a safe space for fallen women to, engage in this kind of work and make some money, okay? And this is a marriage in trouble with a husband that is secretly submissive and a heroine that is dominant, but she just doesn't know it yet. She has those natural tendencies and needs, but she has been browbeaten by her atrocious mother into being a polite and subservient wife. And she suppresses those natural urges within herself because she doesn't want to lose Devil, when in fact it was her fire that attracted him to her. And he fears telling her about his need for pain and instruction. And so this is about a marriage where these two characters are not being honest with themselves or each other, and that causes a rift between them. So in the beginning of this book, they are estranged. And for romance reasons, she comes into the city from the country on a mission. More is revealed and rekindled. And I just loved reading about a heroine coming live to her own dominance, because it allows her to create this safe space for her husband's needs that are not at all accepted during this time period. And I ate it up, and Nicola Davis can write some steam. If you haven't picked her up yet, you need to, okay? That's a wreck. That is a wreck. You need to pick her up. The next I have is Mad Love by April Jade. Ooh, this I will say has trigger warnings centered around chronic illness, but I love that it highlights the atrocity that one must be financially stable to get well. That fact will always astound me. We're following Toby in this, and we meet him on the day that he gets fired from his job. He was a janitor at a gym, and because he cannot afford to get a ride home, nor to walk through the snow without a proper jacket to get there, he decides to sleep in the locker room. And he is awakened by the stern, sexy billionaire Ben, who owns the building. And we get a sense that Ben has been watching Toby, because why would the CEO personally handle this situation? And when Ben sees the state that Toby is in, how sick he is, and the fact that he is struggling really angers him. And so he kidnaps Toby and forces him to be cared for in his gilded cage of control. And obviously in the beginning, Toby is trying to process this forced kindness, okay? Also, he's trying to advocate for his ability to make his own decisions when it comes to his health. And I love how brave he is when he enlightens Ben on the fact that just because he cannot afford the treatment for his lupus doesn't mean that he's being negligent. And all of that is his damn business. I was just here for it. Say it again for the people in the back. I loved that. I also like how he's astute enough to know that Ben kind of has a thing for him, and he wants Ben to admit it before he accepts any more of his help. And that's very difficult for Ben because he isn't neurotypical, and feelings in general are new for him. And so I just love that this is caveman level possessiveness. Okay, this is a slow burn daddy kink. All Ben knows is that he wants Toby to relinquish control over every part of his life. And through Ben's care, Toby starts eating holistically to treat his lupus. He starts reigniting his new passions. Ben gleans joy out of watching Toby flourish under his care. And I loved that element of this book. But I am telling you, I am not being colorful with language, and I say that this is level 10 possessiveness. This plot is bonkers. You need to know that before going in if you're going to pick this up. But Ben is absolutely a dominant hero, and he needed to be on this book, okay? So be warned. I said something. The next book that I have on this list is still in the land of daddy kink, and that is His Cocky Valet by Cole McCade. Ash has just inherited a multi-billion with a B dollar company, and he is inept. He is not able to run it. He's inherited this because his father is dying, and we meet him in the beginning of this book when he is interviewing for personal assistance, and he ends up hiring Brand, who is a personal valet. And the extent to which Brand takes his duties is far beyond what he has been hired to do, okay? Because Brand notices that Ash is this man-child that needs to step up, and he basically helps him get his house in order. And I love how being a valet lends itself very well to daddy kink. This one really reminded me of what I get from a bodyguard romance, because it is one of the few professions, oh my God, excuse me, I'm not gonna edit that out. It's one of the few professions where an employee gets to boss around their boss, and it's rooted in care. And even though Brand is in this role of service, he is very dominant when it comes to directing Ash's steps, even going as far to, offer sexual services so that he doesn't have to be caught in the tabloids during this trying time. Like, I just love it, because when that offer is sort of given, you get a sense that it's reluctantly declined, but it plants the seed that later grows into Ash being vulnerable in his acceptance that it's very intimate and revealing for him to need Bran's direction and to desire Bran. And I like the scene where it really explains what Bran gets from giving Ash this level of care. I think this also does a really good job of showcasing how kink isn't just about sex. I mean, setting boundaries and having open and honest communication and routines centered around growth are all things that are great for all relationships. I was just really here for it. Like, I was here for Ash letting Bran direct every area of his life. It was freaking luscious. The next book on my list is Beast by Misha Stone. This is a Beauty and the Beast retelling where Ellie offers herself up to Ash to pay off her father's gambling debt. And she believes that he's just gonna place her in one of like his many clubs, but he actually ends up taking her on as his personal escort. And like Belle, Ellie really pushes the boundaries of his control, because even though she agreed to this captivity, she refuses to be owned. And so while she's balking, he's giving her stern and steamy correction and laying down the rules of that house, okay? And the way that she responds to his punishments is really shocking for both of them, to the point where he starts to question the validity of her response to him. He wants to know how much of it is her really sacrificing for her father and how much of it is her need for his touch. And that really vexes him, okay? Because why should he care? Why is it that every time he extends an act of genuine kindness, she always brings it back to the ledger of what is owed? This one is very interesting, and Ellie fights their connection every step of the way, to the point where she really has to face the reality that this is a choice, okay? It is a sticky situation, it's tough, but she chose to be there, and he repeatedly reminds her of that. And the moment where she has to face the fact that she enjoys his pain, pleasure, and dominance, his care, it's actually sort of sad, because it really highlights how absent her actual father has been, but it's also a really great moment of growth where she's able to stick up for herself. And I loved that about this book. So the next book that I have on my list is The Bully by Sophie Lark. I die for Dean. Oh my God. I love him so much. He is so cold, calculating, and ruthless, and angry. Gosh, he's so angry. This is the third book in the Kingmaker series. The Heir really reads like his origin story. He is so resentful at the fact that he has had to raise himself. He has not been extended any sort of kindness while growing up. His father was completely incapable of providing that for him. Nothing has come easy for Dean. And at the end of the last book, Dean witnesses the heroine. I am not going to say her name. You may know of her name, but for the people that haven't read this and don't know, I'm not going to spoil that for you. I'm just going to say the heroine. He witnesses her association with a huge event within this series, and he uses that to blackmail her into submission. And so she will be his pet for the next semester. And I did enjoy like the sick and twisted pleasure that he gets from like wielding this control over her. But what I love about it is that this like lasso that he has around her ends up becoming his own restraints. And it's just what they explore together sexually, and what he finds in her is just so freaking beautiful. He unravels for her. I absolutely love how he sees her and respects her intellect in this. He respects her unassuming strength in this. And I just love how he's able to like re-envision his future because of her. The much needed mentorship that he gets out of this book. It's so gratifying. It is such a beautiful book. I die for them. Like, I literally die for them. You have to read it. In my opinion, it's my favorite of the series. I loved The Spy. I think she masterfully plots throughout this series for that. And what we get to see in The Spy, chef's kiss. But in terms of a book in its entirety and the anchoring romance, The Bully is my favorite, and you have to get to it. That's all I'm gonna say. The next book on my list here is another character, or another hero and heroine that I die for, and that is Savage Tracker by Maggie Cole. Obrecht and Selena. In this book, Selena is a recent divorcee. She has survived a horrific marriage where she was abused. She was in a master-slave dynamic with her husband against her will, and she is now free of him on a path towards healing, which is where she meets Obrecht. I love saying his name. He is this blue-eyed, chisel-bodied mafia man with an accent akin to a lullaby, okay? You need to listen to that audiobook. And as an Ivanov, he has been tasked with keeping an eye on her. And the way that he describes first meeting her suggests that that is not at all a task. And I just melted during their meet cute, okay? Because they are screaming the same need. It is just so freaking perfect. And he notices her body language of submission. And later, when they coincidentally meet up again, he's convinced that she is, you know, set out to explore this part of herself. And in this book, he really shows her the way. He shows her how to properly and safely engage in kink, and he treats her like a goddess. He teaches her that consent is king. And together, they dismantle her trauma, and it is just so freaking beautiful. It is heartbreaking when you get to see what she is conditioned to do in a partnership. So to read him cherish her is very gratifying in this book. I also like how therapy is featured in this book. You know, having a trauma-informed and kink-informed therapist makes all of the difference as she's, you know, discovering herself again and coming into her voice. And I love when she uses it in this book. Oh, this book is everything. It is so good. I love it. Oh. The last book on the list is Contradictions by Ampersand. This is a Hermione BDSM fanfic that I absolutely fell in love with, absolutely gushed about in a recent vlog, so I will not go completely in. I promise I'll keep it short, but he belongs on this list. In this one, we're following Hermione when she's having intimacy issues, and we know that she's an investigative queen. And so she treats this like an experiment, doing a lot of research which leads her to the land of kink. And she applies to a sex club that ends up pairing her with a dom. And during their initial meeting, she is blindfolded. And after this dom makes her come after years of not having a freaking orgasm, that sort of like breaks the glamour, and she realizes that it's Draco. And I love this book because of Draco's dom style. his praise in this is very affirming. I think for a character that's very self-sacrificing and a martyr, just for her to be able to be rewarded for just being, not having to do anything, not having to offer anything. I just ate it up. It's so beautiful. I also loved like the mystery in this. I loved how the magic added that extra element to his courting of her. I love how she really has to face the parts of herself that she's really never called to look at by anybody else. I mean, this was just like stand out chef's kiss, and I ate it up. I'm really obsessed with some Hermione fanfic right now, so please be warned that they will end up on a lot of my lists, but I hope you enjoyed my list of dominant heroes and heroines. I want to thank you for joining me. I hope that you consider subscribing and sticking around, and I also hope to see you in the next one. Bye.